Greetings, citizens of the world. This is Anonymous. After our previous coverage of the growing coronavirus outbreak and the associated quarantine lockdowns, our supporters have asked us what we expect to happen in the coming weeks and months. It would be impossible for us to truly predict the future, especially in a situation that is developing so rapidly, but we have been keeping a close eye on this situation, and we are comfortable enough in our research to make a few predictions about what lies ahead. These are simply predictions and are not to be interpreted as statements of fact. As always, you need to do your own research. One thing is for sure, we are only seeing the very beginning stages of this pandemic, and this is something that experts from around the world agree on. The United States and Europe have both been relatively safe from deadly outbreaks in the past several decades, but it appears that their luck has run out. In fact, these areas may end up having things much worse because they have refused to take this issue seriously early on. Citizens of Italy are now regretting the cavalier attitude that they had in the early days of the outbreak in their country, and are now warning others that this pathogen is far more dangerous than the seasonal flu. Unfortunately, no one seems to be listening to these warnings, especially in the US and the UK, which will likely end up as global epicenters as a result of their inaction. In the United States, officials are finally starting to realize that the illness is about to explode domestically, but for a variety of different reasons, citizens of the country would never voluntarily participate in the kind social distancing that is needed to slow the spread. This will serve as a perfect excuse for the US government to declare martial law, a process that has already started to happen with President Donald Trump's recent national emergency decree.
To unleash the full power of the federal government in this effort today, I am officially declaring a national emergency.
The National Guard is already active in multiple cities across the country. Seattle, Los Angeles, and New York City will likely be under a Wuhan-style quarantine lockdown within the next several weeks.
That we can have outbreaks of that proportion in multiple U.S. cities. If you look at Wuhan...
A Wuhan style.
You're
saying the numbers that we are seeing and have seen in China.
Right, in a major U.S. city. Remember, Wuhan was the size of New York City. At the peak of that epidemic, they hospitalized about 20,000 people. 10,000 were in serious or critical condition, and 2,000 were intubated. To give you a basis of comparison, New York State, the entire state, has 50,000 hospital beds and about 3,000 critical care beds, and about 20,000 of those beds are in New York City. So if we have a Wuhan-style outbreak in New York City, that's going to overwhelm the system. So they need to be building surge capacity right now in anticipation of that possibility. Now, there's ways to avert it, but that's the risk that we face right now.
With no one allowed to enter or leave the cities unless they have special permission from the government, which will be very difficult to obtain. Our sources in the states believe that New York will be the first city to go into lockdown, since the numbers of cases are growing exponentially in the city, and the governor of the state has expressed in a recent press conference that such measures would not be ruled out. The New York Times has reported that the city's most wealthy citizens began to flee the region after hearing rumors that a lockdown was imminent. Around the same time, The Guardian spoke with private jet executives, who revealed that there has been a surge in business over the past month because the super-rich are all fleeing to their multi-million-dollar doomsday bunkers. If the virus or the military-style lockdowns have not hit your neighborhood, you may still think that this is a joke due to the misleading statistics, but whether you realize it or not, your life is about to change in a big way. There is a very real possibility that U.S. elections could be suspended or canceled as a result of the coronavirus. In fact, primary elections in the country have already been delayed as a result of the outbreak, and there is now a poll worker shortage as well. Presidential candidates are even beginning to cancel their events, and there are already a variety of different publications that are making predictions about the possibility of a canceled election. What we are likely seeing is a new Great Depression that will totally reorganize the global economy in ways that are currently impossible to predict. The initial lockdowns in China created a supply chain disruption that resulted in a global downturn in the markets, and this was to be expected considering that China is now the manufacturing center of the world and many people were out of work for an extended period of time. For the United States, the consequences of the situation could have been temporary, but the Federal Reserve has made a number of reckless moves in a panic to keep the markets afloat, first with a $1.5 trillion cash injection for Wall Street, and then by slashing interest rates to zero and printing more money, which will cause inflation and decrease spending power for the average person, likely resulting in an economic depression.
The financial markets have been caught within the throes of an unrelenting downtrend over the past several weeks, which has reached a boiling point today after the U.S. benchmark indices posted one of their largest one-day sell-offs in decades, leading Bitcoin and all other digital assets to similarly plunge. Now, the NY Fed is conducting a massive liquidity injection into the markets in an attempt to ease fears regarding companies' access to capital. This $1.5 trillion capital injection is being referred to as the Fed firing its nuclear weapon by analysts and could have impacts on Bitcoin and all other assets.
This virus will not destroy humanity. This is something that our species faces from time to time. But sadly very many people will be lost in this tragedy, and all of our lives will be impacted by the time this thing is over. When the dust settles, we will be waking up in a different world, just as we did on September 12th of 2001. There will be new agencies and bureaucracies to enforce new medical laws, and these governing bodies will likely be global. As we have seen with the tragedies of the past, the people in power will use this crisis as an excuse to accomplish goals that they have been working on for a very long time. We are anonymous. We are legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Expect us.
Thank you.